Live indeed. So I'm just going to get started and not wait, trying to figure out this streaming stuff. But I've got a great show for you today. A number of topics I want to get through. We're going to talk about the Saudis possibly joining BRICS. Jacinda from New Zealand is resigning. Talk about the blues of the billionaires in blue states and potential wealth taxes are going to come. Lastly, I want to touch on the IMF's influence in Egypt. It's all going to tie together. The first topic is about BRICS, the Petrodollar, Saudi Arabia. It's a complicated one, but I think you're going to have a better understanding after this story. So let's get to it. All right. We are here, we are live, and we are talking about Saudi Arabia and BRICS and all that good stuff. My name is Tom. The show is Coffee and Nuance, and what I'm trying to do is learn you a little bit about what's going on in the news today. I think one of the things that often happens, a friend of mine, let's just say he could be my dad, but when I talk to him about certain topics, he always tells me that it's more complicated than that. It's more complicated than that. And then, on the other hand, if I really try to lay it out in a great detail, he says, you're droning on and on and on about it. Get to the point. So with some people, you can never win. I'm going to do my best today to explain this topic. It is a little detailed. It is a little complex, but I'm hoping to bring a little, quote, nuance to it, okay? So the first topic that we have today is BRICS. Now, do you even know what BRICS is? There's a lot to explain. First, Flame On. Flames in the chat if anyone can. BRICS. BRICS is countries. This is an acronym, okay? And the acronym is for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And these lovely gentlemen here all represent those countries. I searched and searched and searched. These guys will not stand in the correct order. They should stand Brazil, Russia, right? India, China, South Africa. They should make one photo like that so that we can use it as a thumbnail, use it as reference. They won't. Every time they line up, they'll be in a different order, but never in the right order for me. Anyway, that is what it is. Anyway, it is a growing military and political influence on the global stage. They formed a bloc, and they can exert their collective influence and present a unified front on issues that are important to all of them. And there have been discussions in the past about expanding the membership of BRICS, but to date, no new members have been admitted. Now, here's the big news. Saudi Arabia has recently applied to join BRICS, but the admission will be based on the consensus of the entire bloc. It's going to be discussed at the BRICS summit in this year, in 2023. I think it's this summer. If admitted, it could bring more economic and political influence to the bloc because of its huge energy resources. Saudi Arabia is seeking to reduce its reliance on any single country and to increase its influence on the world stage. This is a much bigger deal than you may think. Okay. All right, we got a flame. Hey, Tobias was here. Gave a flame in the chat. Thank you, Tobias. That's awesome. Good to see everyone in the chat. Do appreciate that. But yeah, this BRICS, this was formed in 2006. They hold annual summits, and they've established different institutions such as the New Development Bank to support their goals. But what's the big deal if Saudi Arabia were to join BRICS, right? Well, it all has to do with the petrodollar. And you're like, Tom, what's the petrodollar? I don't even know what that is. Well, maybe some of you do. Do my best to explain it to you here. Here's the flag of Saudi Arabia. And it's green. And the way the U.S. thinks of it is green for cash. I made the background money. Thought that was somewhat clever. But the petrodollar is a term used to describe the U.S. dollar's status as the dominant global force, the dominant global currency for oil transactions. And this means that countries around the world use the U.S. dollar to buy and sell oil rather than their own national currency. Now, it's been the case with Saudi Arabia since the 70s that they agreed that all their oil transactions between the two countries would be connected to U.S. dollars. And this agreement later extended to other countries in OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, and other oil producing nations. It solidified the U.S. dollar's role as the world's reserve currency, as countries need to hold U.S. dollars in order to buy oil. Okay, so what, right? So what? By the way, I did learn about different settings with the streaming, so hopefully we won't have the buffer issues that we had yesterday. So I'm glad that it's working so far. But the petrodollar, it's not just that the petrodollar is, it's not just that they use the U.S. dollar to buy and sell oil around the world. That's not the biggest thing. I had some notes here. Where did they go? Oh, yeah, here we go. But what does Saudi Arabia do with its oil sales? It doesn't just use the U.S. dollar. It traditionally uses the proceeds from its oil sales to buy U.S. Treasury bonds. And these bonds are essentially lending the U.S. government money, and in return, the U.S. government pays interest on the bond. It's a way that Saudi Arabia can invest its oil wealth and earn a little return, and they can also have influence on the U.S. Treasury, have influence on U.S. monetary policy, and it's a hedge against currency fluctuations for the kingdom. But the big thing is, and this should be the biggest news, I think, of the last year, our entire monetary system is propped up on the proceeds of energy sales buying these treasury bonds. Right? That's how the United States can run so much debt, is because these countries are buying our bonds. Right? So the entire system, this entire house of cards, is propped up by Saudi Arabia and other OPEC countries using the petrodollar, buying our bonds, essentially lending us money so that we can keep printing more and more and more and more. And there's going to be dire consequences if this changes. Now, the amazing thing is, up until last year, up until the incident with Ukraine and Russia, right? Russia sold everything in U.S. dollars. All countries around the world would sell their energy for U.S. dollars. And out of nowhere, I was really shocked by this, but Biden said, no, don't use, hey, Russia, don't use dollars anymore. What? Yeah. Because that goes against history, right? In history, what would happen about the petrodollar if you were to go off it? What happens? If you're a country and you decide, no, we don't want to use the petrodollar, well, here's three gentlemen that thought that they could go off the petrodollar, right? There have been a number of instances, but this is the general pattern of what's happened. Countries have attempted to break away from the petrodollar system and tried to use currencies other than the US dollar, and these efforts have largely been unsuccessful. And in some cases, they've had some negative consequences, especially for the leaders. For example, in 2000, right, Iraq, under the leadership of Saddam Hussein, announced he'd no longer accept US dollars for oil sales, and instead only use euros. This move was seen as a direct challenge to the petrodollar system. The U.S. led economic sanctions against Iraq. In 2003, the U.S. invaded Iraq. New government was put in place, and the U.S. returned to the petrodollar system in Iraq. Another example is Venezuela. Under the leadership of Hugo Chavez, he did something similar in 2007. He announced that Venezuela would no longer accept U.S. dollars for oil sales. And Venezuela went from one of the wealthiest countries in South America to, one of the countries in South America that is under huge crisis under the crippling sanctions that have been placed upon Venezuela. You know, Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, right? Yeah. You wouldn't know that if you were to see the streets of Caracas. You wouldn't think that they had the largest oil reserves, but that's what happens. That's the consequence of going off the petrodollar. And the last example that I have here, this well-dressed guy on the right, Muammar Gaddafi, former leader of Libya, he attempted to break away from the petrodollar system too. He proposed that the African continent should abandon the US dollar and use a new currency, the gold dinar. It'd be backed by gold, and they'd trade oil and other commodities with it. The idea was to move away from the US dollar and euro, which were seen as a way for the US and Europe to exert economic and political control over Africa. And in 2011, he found out what happened. The regime was overthrown, and that effectively put an end to the idea of the gold dinar. So that is what is happening if you attempt to go off the petrodollar. And for the biggest backer of, the biggest buyer of U.S. bonds, Saudi Arabia, if they were to go off of this, it doesn't appear that the United States government has a problem with this. I haven't seen any pushback on this idea, and it's shocking because normally, historically, if they were to do such a thing, the U.S. president would announce that maybe Saudi Arabia needs some democracy right away. Right? They need some democracy, and the kingdom would no longer be the kingdom. But that doesn't appear to be the case. I don't know why. It seems like, I don't know, maybe someone's trying to crash the economy intentionally. I don't know. I really don't. I'm mystified by this. If you have any ideas on why the U.S. would just be like, sure, go ahead. Yeah, wreck the dollar, Let me know, because I guess I'm not creative enough to understand why that would be an acceptable thing. And now, some new news. We're saying goodbye to Jacinda. New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern, an icon to many, is going to step down. Yeah. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced she would be leaving office on February 7th, citing the need to take care of herself and her family. She's been in office for 5.5 years, became an inspiration to women around the world after first winning the job in 2017. She's praised for her handling of the nation's worst mass shooting and the early stages of the coronavirus pandemic. However, she's faced mounting political pressure at home and criticism from some. Her party will vote for a new leader on Sunday. This is the case that someone started off really strong, and if you saw what happened during the lockdowns, New Zealand seemed to be the harshest on civil liberties, on mandatory vaccinations, on mandatory, just absolute authoritarian control of the people. And she was cheered on by the global leaders as this is how you run a country, right? But I don't think the people were as excited about what she did. And in hindsight, I think there's going to be a very different story written about her leadership. Yeah, that's all I have to say. I obviously was not a fan of the steps that she put in place of, locking her country down, forcing people to take vaccinations. Actually, I'm exaggerating on the other side because I think it was much, much worse than I'm even getting across. I'm sure there'll be lots of good memes about her leaving. Look forward to seeing those. But let me know, did your opinion on her change, or did you always not care for her? Or are you still a fan? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. I'd appreciate that. And yeah, it's funny. Before the lockdowns, I always thought New Zealand was a place that I would want to go and visit, perhaps live. Just seems so lovely. And after you saw what happened during the lockdowns, I think it's turned a lot of people off to ever wanting to go to New Zealand. Yeah. Billionaires. Oh, they have so many problems, don't they? Billionaires in blue states are facing a coordinated wealth tax bills. State legislatures in 7 states, including California, Washington, New York, and others, are introducing bills to raise taxes on this week. To raise taxes on the wealthy. The bill will be introduced simultaneously later this week and intended to raise money through taxes on assets held by billionaires, capital gains taxes, and estate taxes. Legislatures hope to act collectively to minimize the threat of people moving to a nearby lower tax state and see the states as a test case for future national policy. Skeptics of wealth tax argue that rich can easily move to another state, making it hard to generate revenue from a small pool of the state's wealthiest people. And this is true. It's easy to move. We don't have a wall between states, okay? Anyone can move back and forth. It's quite easy. And it always seems to me, and I don't know about you, but it's like, rules for thee, not for me, right? And I tried, actually minutes before this broadcast, I tried to look up something that happened here in Portland. Was not able to find it on Google. It's as if this story has been hidden somewhere. So I'm not saying that this took place in Portland, and I'm not saying, because I didn't fact check it. So I'm not talking about Portland, and I'm not talking about our mayor right now that's worth tens of millions of dollars. But some mayor in some city somewhere in the U.S. declared his residence across the border at his girlfriend's apartment, even though he had an apartment downtown in this city and then a huge mansion in the West Hills of this city. And I'm not talking about anyone specifically. And he had declared his residence in a different state to get out of paying the local taxes. And then when it was time to run for mayor, just announced, oh, no, I live here as well. And that was fine. And there weren't any consequences for that. And it seems like the wealthier that you are, the less consequences that there will be when you do things like declare your residence here, declare your residence here, skip around. It's really easy to change states. In fact, you just need to look at what's happened here. Oregon has put out the call, hey, you want to do drugs on the street? You can come to Portland. You can camp out anywhere you want. It's fine. If people that don't have houses can move easily to a new state to get a little better benefit, what makes you think that billionaires can't do the same thing? Of course they can. This is very short-sighted on these blue states doing this. I understand that some people have to keep their residence, if you're in Hollywood or something and you live there and that's where you work every day. But it is quite easy to change your residence, to be somewhere part-time, to be somewhere else part-time. And if you are to take someone, say you have a billionaire living in your state and he just moves across the border and says, no, I live here now, I'm keeping my house, and I'll be there part-time, but my main residence is just over the border where they're not going to tax me. The state is going to see a lot less taxes. And this idea that they're going to raise more taxes by taxing the uber wealthy, I don't think it's going to work. It seems very short-sighted to me. But again, I'm not impressed by the thinking of a lot of local leaderships. And I don't know. You got any better thoughts on that? Let me know. And lastly, I want to talk about the IMF. This goes with the Petrodollar, keeping it alive. One more story about it. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, is using its economic influence to stop Egypt's effort to de-dollarize its economy by providing $3 billion in a support package to the country. The loan conditions include lifting restrictions on imports, allowing certain economic activities to be privatized, and these IMF loans often further U.S. interests and are criticized for being excessively harmful to the poor. Yeah, no surprise. And for not being tailored to the country's specific circumstances. Now, these IMF loans have not been helpful in places like Africa in the long run, but instead they keep African countries dependent on aid, but that didn't stop them from loaning, whatever you want to call it, $3 billion to Egypt to stop this. So once again, you talk about not using the dollar. There's the carrot, there's the stick. The IMF came in with a carrot. Hey, leader, we'll loan you all this money, and we're going to ask for it back later, but you'll probably be out of office by then. So, and the results are all obviously exactly what you would think. Now, I do appreciate this. Oh, what I needed to say earlier, and I didn't, is yesterday I asked for 25 likes, and you all came through with 33, and I really appreciate that. I don't know when I got the 25 likes. I'm not sure if I got them by midnight or not. But again, today I am asking for 25 likes. You can do it. You can help me. It really helps the channel. And the channel doesn't cost anything. The show doesn't cost anything. That's a way that you can support me, is by hitting that like button. And after the outro, I will stick around and read your comments. Hope y'all are having an awesome day. Peace. Oh, that's right. I didn't even say. I got a huge fact check tomorrow. It was actually going to be the big story today, and I decided to make it a fact check. It's a little dangerous. It involves the last election and evidence of any widespread voter fraud. I am going to attempt that tomorrow and stay within the terms of service. So I'm going to try a fact check for that tomorrow. But I do appreciate everyone that has been in the chat. N-Man, good afternoon. Mr. Coffee, good to see you. Tobias was here. Got some coffee. Time for a little nuance. Nice. Diet Sprite made it. Hey, Doug. Natalia let me know that it's not buffering. Did the whole show go without buffering? Because that's great. I had to learn how to do the settings right. And apparently it worked. But there were no storms outside either. That may have had an effect yesterday. Not sure. Tobias gave me a flame. That's good. Doug says no buffer. Good. What's up, Martin? Says Natalie said that Haiti has large oil reserves as well. I didn't know that. I actually want to do a story about Haiti. They may not have anyone in charge right now. They may have no elected officials. So I need to do a story on that. Recently, in the last few years, sold nuclear tech to Saudi Arabia. Maybe the WEF can provide answers, says Natalie. Yeah, perhaps they can. Probably not. N-Man says, speaking of Jacinda, that she doesn't care about human rights. No, she cares about human rights, just not your human rights. Ta to the toothy tyrant. I don't know. I kind of like her teeth. I kind of like her teeth. I was thinking, I should get some big veneers and I could have a nice big smile as well, because that's what you need to make it big. Maybe the channel would be a lot bigger if I could, just get some porcelain fronts, just get all my teeth done and learn to open my mouth a lot. Give that look. I always thought she looked nice. I thought she was an attractive world leader, if you're allowed to say that, in 2023. Natalie was ambiguous initially and now despises Jacinda. I understand that feeling is widespread. Tobias says the quaintest places were taken the most advantage of during the pandemic. I agree. I do think that they got a lot of pressure. And that's what the global leaders seem to do, is apply pressure on smaller leaders and see if you play ball or not. And if you do, you get certain benefits. And if you don't, it's the carrot and the stick, right? Natalie says, we've tried this here in Washington before. Somehow big money advertising sends the sheeple into spasms, the no new taxes, even though their own tax situation would not be affected. What's the answer? Federal income tax? No state income tax? Well, the thing is, when you have different states and people can move, if you raise it too much, you're just, look, it all depends on incentives. I think incentives explain nearly everything. So what's kept me here in Portland? Well, the reason that I'm here, I don't like it as much as I used to. When I moved here, I loved this place. And now, not as much. I have family here, and I like seeing my family. You know, that's it. I still am considering going elsewhere part-time, and I'd like to be set up actually south of the border uh, very soon, part-time. So that's my own thing. But incentives really explain everything. And if you are incentivizing people to move, the people with the most money, it's easier for them to move. But yeah, like I say, if homeless people can cross the country no problem, so can billionaires. So it's complicated. It's complicated. But anyway, I just want to say thank you to everybody in the comments. I really appreciate it. Thanks for hitting that thumbs up. I think we made it through the entire stream without buffering. I'll check the stats on that. But again, thank you. Let me know if you learned anything. Share this video, and I will see you tomorrow with a fantastic fact check that's going to be very dangerous. Have an awesome day. Peace.